Former Cavalier Colin Sexton reveals the truth about what happened when he was traded from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Utah Jazz in the Donovan Mitchell trade. Some interesting looks back to the past, as well as his reaction as to what happened when he was traded. Hey everybody, Billy BB back with you on Cavs Digest, discussing everything that's happening this offseason. And despite no free agent signings, there's been a ton with the Cavaliers, dismissing all the trade rumors of the Big Four and yet bringing them right back with Jared Allen, possibly Brandon Ingram, Isaac Okoro, and then Team USA action. Why isn't Donovan Mitchell on the team? And then two huge extensions, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. Everything has been discussed here on the channel. Feel free to go back and watch. Feel free to subscribe. It is free. Gets you all that content right away when you log on to YouTube. We appreciate all our subscribers, followers, and those who leave a comment discussing what we're talking about. What we're talking about today is Colin Sexton, the former Cavalier, that pick from the Kyrie Irving trade, now one of the players traded in the Donovan Mitchell trade. He's with the Utah Jazz now. He spoke on the Pat Bev podcast, the Patrick Beverley podcast with Barstool. They asked him straight up, were you upset when Cleveland traded you? What happened when Cleveland traded you? Now we're going to watch a clip on his reaction and get into that a little bit. However, I just want to start by saying Colin Sexton had the opportunity to really create some drama, really create an issue, really go at the Cavaliers, really go at maybe even the Jazz if he wanted. And I can appreciate that he elected to take the high road and be honest and talk a little bit about what really happened, how he really felt, and how a trade like this went down. Sexton, couple years on the Cavaliers, some ups, some downs. I mean, some really, really fun basketball from Colin Sexton. That's the type of player he is. The nickname, the Young Bull, is well-earned. Cavs fans loved him. They really had an appreciation for him, but they, in general, weren't hugely surprised when he was traded. They felt like he would be a big piece of that, and he was coming off a leg injury that had cost him the season before. But real quick before we get into all that and kind of his history with the Cavs, where he's at now, let's watch that clip from the Pat Bev podcast.
You leaving Cleveland. Was that tough?
I think it was different because it was the first time I got traded.
Right. That first trade be different.
I was injured my fourth year, so I had got injured, and I was playing pretty well.
Was that contract year?
Yeah, contract year. I had got injured, so the whole summer I was just grinding to get back, and even if I had to take what was already on the table, I'm like, all right, well, that's cool. I'm gonna prove myself, show them what I can do. So at the end of the day, I feel like that whole time I was down, I was thinking like, oh, when I get it back on the court, it's over with.
Your mentality is locked in.
For sure.
So that when the trade happens.
Crazy trade, too.
Yeah, a big trade. A lot of
I
moving
just
pieces.
leave Utah.
You did just leave.
You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, so as I said in that clip, I think Colin Sexton had an opportunity to really go, oh, I gave so much to Cleveland. I did this for Cleveland. I did that for Cleveland. And look what happened. They traded me. I was really looking forward to playing with Darius Garland. And, I was just devastated. And they didn't call my agent. They called me here. I think he took the high road and he said, man, it stunk to be a part of a trade. You know, he didn't really talk too much about, I thought we were building something special. Can't believe it happened. Blah, blah, blah. I think he just was straight up and he was honest and said, look, I was a little shook. I hadn't been in the NBA that long, and the Cavs traded me, and, I had to go and start somewhere new. I'd focused really on getting healthy. I appreciated the fact that he had talked about that, and I appreciate the fact that he also discussed, hey, I was willing to take a pay cut. I was really focused on getting healthy, and I was focused on getting back with the Cavaliers and playing with the Cavaliers. And I want to throw a shout out to Sexton, and you got to appreciate that he didn't go in on the Cavs, and he didn't go in on any other situation going on with that trade, that he just kind of said, hey, I was focused on getting healthy, and I found out I was traded. That's a little upsetting for me as a young player to be a part of my first trade. And then, surprisingly, Pat Bev and Sexton, they kind of jump into some Utah talk. I mean, they immediately get into what's going on with the Jazz, how they feel about the Jazz. Pat Bev was showing some love to the Jazz. So I thought that was interesting that he went immediately from, I was upset to be traded. It's tough to be a part of your first trade. You don't kind of see it coming. And instead, he shoots right to that kind of, Utah this, Utah that. And Pat Bev was doing the same. Now, for Sexton, looking back on that trade, this is his past season, but this describes Colin Sexton as a player. Describes him in year 2, 3, 4 with the Cavaliers. High usage, get him the ball, shoots the ball a lot, 18 to 20 points per game. I think his career high, I believe, is 24. We'll look at that in just a second. But look, from pretty much his second year, it was discussed and determined by everybody around the NBA, the Cavaliers, the Cavalier fans, people willing to trade for him, that, look, this is a perfect six-man. Bring him off the bench, let him work, let him get to work with what you can give him off the bench. And now in Utah, he's in a very awkward position at this point in time where essentially the Jazz are leaning towards a rebuild. They're leaning towards going younger, and Sexton's pretty much entering his prime, but he's entering his prime, as we figured out, he should be a career six-man. He should be a guy coming off the bench. So if you look at his numbers career-wise, he peaked at 24 points per game. However, he's come back down a little bit. And the funny thing is, I just feel like we know who he is at this point. The Cavs knew who he was. Injury or no injury, I don't think they thought if he was healthy they weren't going to get rid of him. I think they knew that he was about a 18 to 20 points per game scorer, probably should come off the bench on a legitimate team, but they could use him as a serious trade piece, which is what they ended up doing in the Donovan Mitchell trade. And there was some serious blowback. People love Colin Sexton in Cleveland. They loved his energy. They loved his whole time here and what he was kind of accomplishing. I personally saw Colin Sexton for what he was. He was a good player, high stats player on a bad team, which makes you look better than you are. Okay? A lot of people thought he would have that Devin Booker moment where he takes it up a notch, and I just always knew him for what he was. He was, like as I said, a good player on a bad team, which makes you look even better than you are. Again, looking at those stats, I mean, he had that great year right there, that 2021 season, 24 points per game, dished the ball a little bit. I mean, that was a huge year. But the Cavs were his usage was huge during that season. It was ridiculous. The Cavs were using him all the time. He's taking every shot, playing every game, and again, I give him credit with that. And it got to the point, though, again, if you recall, that he just wasn't meshing both with coaching, and him and K Love had that issue, if you recall. He's trying to dish it down low, and Love stomping on the floor, begging for the rock, trying to get after him to pass the ball. So his time in Cleveland, well remembered for high energy and some exciting scoring games. However, it did not necessarily upset me personally when Colin Sexton was traded from the Cavaliers. And I think he knew, too, that he was a pretty good player, but he wasn't going to be a cornerstone. We saw him starting to kind of have a thing with Darius Garland, where it was like one of these guys is the future and one of these guys is kind of taking up space from the other, and eventually Garland kind of took over. My theory of good player on a bad team came to fruition when he tore his ACL and the Cavaliers became a playing team, an exciting team, and a fun team to watch. I think that's kind of what happened with Colin Sexton in Cleveland. I wish him the best in Utah. I hope he finds a fit there. However, I think this upcoming season, if you see the Jazz in the position that they've been in multiple years in a row where they're struggling and they can't get things going, I think Sexton's going to be a huge trade piece for a team. I've even seen him mentioned with the Cavaliers a couple of times, but we'll see on that. What do you guys think? Drop down below. Get into the comments. What do you think of Colin Sexton? Did the Cavaliers make a mistake trading him? Seems like there's no ill will there. Who is he as a player? Do you believe he's a six-man? Do you believe he's a starting point guard? Has he earned kind of that contract he's got at 4 years, $72 million? And again, what's his future now in the NBA? Drop down to the comments below and make sure you subscribe to Cavs Digest.